All right, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We will begin this evening with a few workshop items. Our first workshop item this evening is for 162 Beach Street, and this is a sketch plan review for, it looks like one building with 2 additional dwelling units. This is in the HDR zoning district. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a sketch plan review. As you mentioned, it's only 2 dwelling units on 1 building, so there's 11 dwelling units on the property right now, so this would increase it to 13 total. We just asked for additional details in the next set of plans about buffering, lighting, landscaping, and how proposal fits into the overall context of the site. And the proposal qualifies, as far as we can see so far, for a subdivision amendment, site plan review, or site plan amendment and conditional use review. We have some departmental reviews and comments available for you to take a look at, and that's what we have so far. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. And we have the applicant with us this evening?
Yes, I'm representing the applicant. I'm Rob McSorley with Saco Technics, and I'm here representing the owner of the property. As Emily had summarized, what we're trying to do is we're doing a little bit of infill housing here in this development that my client has purchased. We're looking to add 2 additional condominium units. I believe the density allows us to go up to a maximum of 15 units. We will be adding 2 more units to go to 13. And so we came before DRC, or the Development Review Committee, several months back and presented this. And since then, we've decided to move ahead. We thought we'd give the planning board the chance of looking at this at sketch plan before we did a full submission. A couple things that I'd like to point out on the project. Once again, it's infill housing. We're looking to accommodate stormwater by doing additional water quality treatment for the additional impervious areas that we're going to be setting or constructing in here. There are some dimensional items that I'd like to mention. When this project was originally approved, the access aisle requirements for parking was only 20 feet. It's currently 24 feet. We have modified some areas of the main driveway through there to have that 24-foot requirement for adequate backup for the parking spaces. There are 2 parking spaces that you will see that are kind of isolated on your plan across from units 5, 6, and 7. Unfortunately, we are unable to widen that 20-foot section. So in lieu, what we've done is we provided deeper parking spaces by 4 feet to accommodate that extra room to back up the parking or the cars that would be parking in those areas. Also, relative to looking at the ordinance, when we looked at the parking that was required for this project, the existing project has 11 units and 24 parking spaces. And what we did was we computed the additional parking only for the new units. We assumed that the existing parking was sufficient for the 11 units. And so if you took 4 or 2 units with 2 parking spaces each, that's 4, and then you need to have 1 additional parking space because you're required to have additional 1 per 6 spaces. So we added 5 spaces to account for that. And the last item probably probably should be discussed is the setback requirements in the zone. There's a maximum and minimum dimensional requirement. I think that's more on you would see on a single-family home versus a multifamily project like this that's existing, where you have the 5 feet and the 15 feet max min. And we would assume that it being a multifamily project, that would not really apply as you would have in a single family or a single building fronting a street frontage. So with that, we think it's a good infill project and looking to get the planning board's input.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this moment?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim?
if, just a few questions. So I'm looking at the concept plan,
Yep.
and I was trying to understand where the new units are going to be, and there's obviously a orange building in there, which I'm assuming is the new building.
Yes, what we did is we used the approved site plan or subdivision plan for the last approval. And what you see is that stuff that is highlighted and colored is the changes that we would make as part of this. For instance, the parking right now only exists along that entry road. We're kind of creating that parking, which is across from units 5, 6, and 7. That would be a new parking layout versus the parking that just went along the entryway. The good thing about it is where we put that new parking is we have that full 24-foot dimension there. So the new building is, yes, the orange building that you see on the concept plan.
So it looks like, if I'm reading this right, and I'm probably not, but it looks like there are 5 parking spaces in front of the new building, which will be lost.
Yeah, those parking spaces will be lost that are right there at the location of the building, and we would add additional spaces to offset that. That's why the configuration of the parking that we have that's directly across from units 5, 6, and 7. So as I mentioned earlier, we had 24 spaces. That was what accommodated for the 11 units. For the new units, we need to have 5, 2 for each unit, and a guest space. So this plan now shows 29 spaces on it. And you can see over in front of units 8 and 9, there's 2 additional spaces there. And then we add the additional spaces by reconfiguring that parking lot.
So that's really helpful. So the new parking spaces are in that top section, which there's it says transformer pad.
Yep.
In that area. So there's it looks like 5 spaces there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces total in
Okay,
that.
okay.
Because we've taken those spaces that along the main roadway and taken those out to create the parking that's either direction.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's really helpful. I couldn't.
I saw,
Wasn't quite sure with all the different lines on the plan where that was, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And is there, I guess just sort of final question about that, the, down on the sort of right-hand side of the plan where it looks like 2 additional parking spaces were created, it looks like there's something, some star-shaped object, which to me suggests like a light.
that's the Northern Star.
It is the Northern Star.
No, it is a street light.
Okay. So is that going to interfere with that, using those 2 parking spaces, if it's a street light, like right in the middle of that parking area?
In the middle of it?
Well, yeah, again, maybe I'm
Are you talking near spaces 1A, 1B, 2A?
No, there's a place in the plan that it says.
Oh, I see, yeah. That will be relocated, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that one would.
And,
We had 2 Northern Stars. I had the wrong one.
So there's a little new Northern Star in the green area.
Yep,
And so you'll be relocating that pole to like over there?
correct.
I see.
Yep.
All right. No, that's very helpful. I understand what you're doing, and I mean, it looks like a sensible thing to try to do, as long as you can fit everything in. So that's great. And I know you'll be dealing with all the many other just sort of technical issues with the lighting and buffering and all that. But now that I understand this better, it certainly looks like a sensible way of trying to deal with adding a few more units to that lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, so do you, and I could be missing it here on the plan, do you have a spot for snow storage?
There are some island areas that we have left over. We would push it, back here, there, and everywhere. This is going to be home ownership condominium. A lot of times what we do is they will contract for snow removal if they get too much snow in a year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so one of my questions was snow storage.
Yep.
And I'm very grateful, thankful that you're increasing the turnaround radius as much as possible for the 24 feet
Yep.
for maneuverability. But as I look at your proposed parking area across from units 5, 6, and 7, the 9 that we're talking about, obviously you had to make an island around the existing, looks like a pedestal arrangement with telephone and transformer utility.
Correct.
There'll probably be some bollards in there for physical protection.
Yep.
But you create this hammerhead kind of, does that meet turning radius for a turnaround? So, I mean, I see you've intended on paving it up to that, that property line, kind of the northern property line. But my question is cars that are in those northernmost spots, do they have enough to turn backing out? An overlay movement would be nice, so we could see that they're not trying to not be able to make that maneuver and having to back all the way out into the roadway. That would be, one of my concerns. And then as far as waste disposal, dumpster, I'm not seeing any dumpster location or truck turning movements to pick that up.
There's an existing dumpster that is near, if you look at Unit 7, there's some new parking spaces that are going to be placed over there. Right to the end of that is where the dumpster location is, and it will remain. This was a question that came from engineering. What happens now is the back access of this is closed off. It has been for years. What will happen is the garbage truck will come in and make kind of a three-point turn in that big pavement area and then line up on the garbage thing and then drive out.
Okay.
Typically, it's kind of like the reverse, because usually you shoot in and then you do your three-point turn to get out. This, you do the three-point turn to get in.
Which is absolutely fine, I guess, as long as maybe we have an overlay to make sure that's a functional or a doable maneuver when those parking spots are occupied.
That's what
The community mailbox is obviously kind of remaining in the same proximity. There's no existing kind of pull-off, so you just have, are you planning on putting a pull-off in?
No, no.
So that would remain. You did mention a couple of your existing area lights. Will you be adding any more lighting to create lighting uniformity across the parking areas?
We will look at it to see if it's appropriate. We know that nowadays communities like to deal with dark skies and whatnot. We will meet the minimum required, and everything will be a full cutoff fixture that shines down and whatnot.
Correct, right? So it's just that fine line between we can be dark sky compliant and
Correct.
provide enough lighting to create a safe environment for the occupants.
Yeah, we'll look at that as part of the technical aspect.
Kind of my initial hunch is it's a little bit of a different design, having the parking more remote from each one of the units. I don't know. I guess it would be interesting to know if there's support from the existing owners or existing occupants. So you said it's going to be owner occupied. Is it
correct.
not currently owner
It's
occupied?
currently leased.
So
It's a leased property, and it's going to be go to ownership condo.
Okay. Yeah, as long as it's well illuminated, I guess each to his own. I wouldn't be a fan of having to walk quite so far from the parking areas, but if it meets our requirements for lighting, then that was all I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? I share a few of the thoughts from the board members here. You answered some of them. Snow storage, lighting, landscaping. Can you touch briefly upon the comment from DPW about the one-way in? And then I know you responded to that, but can you maybe kind of catch us up on that conversation?
Yeah, the original plan that was approved back eons ago showed it as a one-way, and that's why you see the arrows on the plan. We basically took the old approved plan to demonstrate what we wanted to do. The roadway width through there is 20 foot wide. That's adequate for two-way traffic. The big deficiency at this point is relative to typical parking. You want that access aisle to be 24 feet for that backup maneuver versus the 20 feet. And once again, we've created that by widening, or in the case of the two parking spaces, making them deeper so that they have that extra footage.
So is there connectivity to Lafayette Street? as
There's
well, or-
there's no access other than from Beach Street. That access is closed off.
Okay, so there must be a curb or something.
There's a wire across the pole right now. Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then you mentioned, I hadn't caught it in any of the notes there, but you mentioned the setbacks for the zone. So I guess I'm gonna say that should be something you should work with Emily and the code office on, because maybe there's something with an underlying approval with this previous subdivision or part of the project, I'm not sure, but as far as I know, I don't think the planning board has the ability to waive setbacks for the zone. So that, the overall concept makes sense. I'm in agreement. But I'm not sure about the setback piece. I'm not sure if that's something that the board can.
One of the things, that if I can point out, we were actually looking to push that building all the way over towards the Beach Street and be right at 15 feet there. But there's a lot of mature trees and vegetation there that it was believed when we had the DRC meeting, it was a concern that was brought up by staff that, to keep that for buffering on the project and whatnot.
Sure. Makes sense. I agree. Just one of those process things. I'm sure it's on everyone's radar there, but just something to, I guess, have clarity and resolution when we see you again. But other than that, it looks like we've got internal mailbox, sidewalks. So just sort of understanding, I guess, sort of the updates to some of those items that the board members mentioned. I think that's Jim.
Okay, if I could just follow up on one point you just made, Mr. Chair. Is there a reason why There wasn't a connection made to Lafayette Street originally? Or,
There is a physical connection right now. It has been closed for years.
but would that be, I mean, I'm just thinking that it could be helpful for people in that development. I mean, perhaps they like to just have one entrance and one exit, but it would seem like in an emergency that could be pretty handy to have Lafayette Street available.
I think it's there for emergency purposes. They just don't want the through traffic.
Okay, so
you know-
this development didn't originally want to have through traffic cutting through.
I can only imagine that that was the reason why it got put in after the fact.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So kind of touching on that, I wonder if there was a little bit more discussion with the board at the time because of the visibility underneath the railroad tracks and wanting vehicular traffic to enter from Beach Street and then exit out Lafayette where they have more controlled access and better visibility. That might be something we should probably, investigate, and there could be a very good reason for that. I can understand the concern about through traffic, but it's not like the connection to Lafayette is expeditious to go through this particular development versus heading down to Lock Street. So I would think we might want to kind of just touch base and make sure there's a very solid reason as to why that was closed off, and if it was closed off with permission of the city or just something that the association decided to kind of do on their own, if you're stating it's more of a cable just kind of hanging across the physical.
I would have to assume that the prior owner had approached the city on that. It wasn't a association at that time. When we met with staff was fully aware of it. I believe the fire department had brought it up. So.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? All right, great, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, continuing along with our workshop items. Our next item is Eastview Parkway, and this is a sketch plan review for a 6-unit office building. And this is within Park North and presented this evening by DM Roma. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bedard Homes LLC proposes 7880 square foot single storage professional office building. It's over in Eastview Parkway. This proposal is within parcel 2 of the Park North contract zone. So remember, we went over like these parcels are like mini zones of the contract zone. So this one's in parcel 2, and professional offices, and business services are all permitted uses. The city engineer has provided comments, and we have some general planning comments here, mostly about buffering, architectural, which Jason did provide me architectural plans to look at this evening that we can put up on the screen in a minute for you. Pedestrian connectivity, solid waste, exterior walkways, and then we'll be looking at this relative to site plan review standards. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily at this time, board members? All right, and with that, we have the applicant with us this evening.
Good evening, Jason Haskell with DM Roma Engineers. Kevin Bedard with Bedard Homes LLC is here with me tonight on the professional office building off of Eastview Parkway. The existing lot as it is right now appears to have been graded at one point over the years, but it's kind of grown up with some, young sapling, around kind of the exterior with a lot of weeds and things like that have grown up since then. And then there's also been some, spillover of construction activity from the abutter. But that has been all stabilized and ready to go for whenever Kevin's ready to go. This is Lot 6 from the Park North development. The The plan is for this 7,880 square foot building to be split up into 6 individual units, with Bedard Homes being one of the units. There is the potential for the flexibility to combine some of the units if someone, one of the companies needs larger space. It's something that they will have the flexibility to do. Right now, as we have the site designed, we have 32 parking spaces, which is what's required by the ordinance. Within that parking lot, we've also kind of put in some landscaped islands, kind of to break up the long stretch of parking along the facade of the building. And then we'll also have some landscaping in front of the actual building between the sidewalk and the building itself. Served by public water, sewer, and underground electric services as part of the Park North and the Eastview Parkway construction. The sewer and underground electric has been stubbed to the lot. We'll just need to work with Maine Water on kind of the capacity statement and the connection to the main itself, which is on the near side underneath the sidewalk. So it shouldn't be a disturbance to the road itself to tie into it. We have received the capacity letter from Water Resource Recovery, so that is at least one thing off our list. We will be proposing sprinkler systems, or a sprinkler system for this development as well. Stormwater detention and treatment for this will connect into the Park North stormwater infrastructure, which this lot had a certain amount of impervious area, kind of contributing to one of the downstream ponds, and we're just going to tie in to the system. We do have a little bit of work with the city engineer on some of the past approvals for that stormwater, but we'll definitely look into that as well. It'll be heat and cooled by forced hot air, run off of propane. One thing that we do not have on the plan right now is location of the HVAC, the exterior HVAC, and the propane tank. When we come forward with the final design, we'll have those locations kind of nailed down, and then any buffering needed to kind of break that up. The building architecture kind of in front of you, and I apologize for not having this in the original sketch plan submission. The proposed building will incorporate varying siding materials. Down near the bottom, there'll be stone, like a stone facade, then boarded batten on top, and then kind of a black metallic look of the canopy on top, kind of going over the entrances. And then, as you can see, there's some large window panes on the property, especially facing the parking area, kind of the front facade. And then there's also going to be step backs for each one of the units to break it up and put an architectural feature to the building itself. One other item that was not on the sketch plan was a dumpster location. We're going to work on trying to find a location for that as well before we submit for final plans. That is all I have right now, and take any of your comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any initial thoughts? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had kind of my list. You touched on the dumpster, kind of turning movements, the utility location, the transformer, kind of lighting for the parking, which obviously be in final review.
Yep.
The question about stormwater runoff, which you touched on, because the city engineer had mentioned it to me, because it's always a little bit mind-boggling, right? We're trying to keep how many cookies they've designed their cookie jar for on these projects, and then just want to make sure that your impervious areas for this lot is what they had allowed, and I'm sure you'll work all that out. And,
right.
Joe's very good about that record keeping, especially where it's going to a common off-site location. I think I really liked the proposal. I think it's important that this area get built out with some more of the kind of mixed use that we've been promised, and to see that happen is good. It's positive. I had thoughts about no building elevations provided in the packet. However, knowing that your work, I was expecting, to see something. This looks very, very nice. I think it'll fit in very well. My only concern a little bit, and it's hard to see, is the north elevation from the Route 1. I know we're oftentimes told that drops and you can't see, but every time a unit gets built, I feel like you can still see it. And I think even when I've been here, a couple of them we've kind of let slide without a whole lot of architectural features. And like I said, I didn't know that you had the steps in the depth of the wall as well, which is hard to see on that. But I trust with the detail and thought that you put into the front and side profile, that if it looks too much like the traditional side of a barn or a chicken coop, you're going to mix it up. And you guys have always done very well. That's just something that even though I think you meet our definition with the 50 feet of, a character, a step, a window, maybe a little colored, maybe a little siding change, but because it's 130 some odd foot long building-ish. That's a fairly long wall. And I almost feel like it doesn't do great justice in the sense, because when you get around to that East Parkview elevation and then the front elevation, it's a beautiful building. So I know that you guys will do well on that piece of it, and I think it's great that you're creating the opportunity for kind of mixed uses in this area. We hear that it's a focal point, it's a growth area, and now this doesn't necessarily fall within the 600 feet of Route 1, but it's because of, as Emily touched on, the micro zones. I just think it's very positive. I think it's very positive that we're going to see some commercial opportunity there. So I look forward to seeing you guys through this process, and I think what you've presented so far is particularly nice, and maybe just those little details in the back. I think it'll be a great addition to that area to have some professional offices or mixed use other than residential. So thank you very much for the proposal.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
I'm a little newer to the game here when it comes to Park North. So I am familiar on Eastview, Eastview Park Road. There's a office building right in the very front, to the right-hand side of when you're coming in Eastview.
Yep.
Parkway. Is this building going to be like right behind it? Is that?
No, this is lot 6, so I believe there's at least 4 or 5 lots between that.
So this will be so the development would be that front office building, and then there'll be several lots, and then so it'll be set farther back, right?
Correct. And yeah, right next to it, closer to Route 1 from our lot, it looks like a commercial flex space, or like a light industrial flex space. I'm assuming it went through the board. I'm just not sure of who it is or.
No, I'm trying to just picture the location, because I couldn't see that from the map.
Oh, yep.
That was giving us like exactly where that lot was on the whole picture. I guess the only other question because I agree, I think that what you have as a start looks great, and as I also, from the brief time that I've seen you with proposals, that you'll do a fine job to make sure that the building will be attractive, and I like what you have shown us so far. There was one question that the city engineer mentioned, and you didn't touch upon, but was there there's a catch basin in Eastview Parkway near the proposed entrance to the site that the city engineer mentioned. And he said that would either need to be relocated out of the driveway or the driveway entrance shifted to avoid the catch basin. Have you given any thought to that, how to deal with that?
Yeah, we went through and actually went out and did a survey of the property and located those catch basins. So we're going to do our best to keep that up along the curb line. Whether or not we need to rotate the tops, the grade itself, that may be something we need to do to put it up against the curb line, but that'll be something that definitely gets touched on. We're hoping not to have to move that.
Yeah, I imagine that would be quite a project.
Yes, it would be. Yep.
And he also, the engineer also mentioned, sidewalks and so forth, and I didn't see that as much in your proposal there, but I'm sure you'll also address that when you come
Yeah,
up
we'll
with the
find,
final
we'll
plan.
find a way to get that connectivity.
That's great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts? Yeah, no, thank you, Jason. I didn't really have a whole lot more to add myself. Sort of our typical thoughts: lighting, dumpster, landscaping, sort of those typical elements. Nothing really jumping out at me. I do appreciate some of Jeff's comments here, and I think that northwest corner as well, I think is a good opportunity to add a little bit more architecture there for a little bit more curb appeal and potential flexibility. I see had 6 bays or so of potential tenant spaces, and I know while we're calling it an office building now, that could be a good corner, that first bay closest to the street, for maybe something else. So maybe just,
That'll be Kevin's.
I
He's
was
he's
thinking-
already claimed that one.
oh yeah, all right. Well,
So it's a custom home builder, so he'll make it pretty.
I was thinking it'd be a nice little spot for a cafe or like a little small restaurant.
Oh, yeah,
It'd be-
yeah.
It'd be a, just to Jeff's point about the flex uses out there and more stuff happening. But other than that, I didn't have any major comments. Just keep moving forward and keep developing it. But other than that, nothing major for me. Any other thoughts, board members? No?
Thank you very much.
All right, great, thank you.
We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Sorry, can't hear you.
We do have a 3D rendering of it as a video, if you guys would like to see it, with the vegetation and everything in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of nice.
I don't know how I would project it, I can,
It's a little,
Could that be sent, like,
So
emails?
you can email it to me, or like if Jay, you don't have your laptop, so you can email it to me and I can put it up on the screen, or you can submit it as part of the next application. Did the board want to see that now? We can have it emailed.
let's email it. If we wait for it, it'll be stuck in limbo and outer space, and we'll be waiting here. Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, if they could email it and it goes through fairly quickly, I mean, we don't have a huge agenda, and I think it might be, that's kind of our one comment while they're here. If we give them a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, but
If
it's
it,
up to you, Mr. Chair, if you want.
sure, if it pops up briefly, we have some ordinance amendments to look at, and maybe perhaps if it pings your email during that period, we can take a look at it, but we'll look forward to that, but you're gonna have a thought?
I just want to make sure it's being emailed so I know if I'm looking for it.
I think this would set a whole new standard for presentations. We'd have movies to watch instead of just plans. I kind of like that.
All right, great. So Our next workshop item, Emily, we have a few draft ordinance amendment updates.
Thank you. This is really to just give you a quick update on where we are with timeline. I was hoping I would have more items for your review, but we're putting everything together as a package. So we've started those draft red lines, but we're gonna have to wait till Long Range Planning Committee has formed a subcommittee, and they are finishing their business soon. And then Long Range Planning Committee will meet in January. And so I think we should have red lines shortly after that. But I just want to give you the update because I was really hoping to have them for you before the end of December, but I think we're going to be into January before we have actual red line edits to look at.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we will move into our normal meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the planning board, valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we are residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, December 10th, Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. With us this evening, we have myself, the chair, Matt Provenzel, and to my left, Jeff Brochu. To my right, Carrie Lynn Lane and Jim Mollier. Our vice chair, Joyce Leary Clark, is absent this evening, along with Matt DiCiani and Phil Hatch, our city council liaison. With us always, we have our city planner, Emily Cole Prescott, and Lisa Harmon. And with that, I will move on to our next item on the agenda. We have our review and approval of some draft meeting minutes, our first being from November 12th. Any comments, edits from board members?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the November 12th meeting minutes as drafted.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to accept the draft minutes as presented? All right, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Abstain?
Jeff?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 3-0 with one abstention. And our next set of minutes from December 3rd. Any comments, questions, or edits on those?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to commend the staff for the very detailed November 12th minutes, because they clearly reflect literally everything we talked about at that sketch plan meeting. And it really is, as Jeff pointed out last time, it's incredibly helpful for us to remember what we looked at or what we were concerned about initially. So I want to commend the staff on that. And accordingly, I'll move that we accept the November 12th draft minutes.
I'll second.
Mr. Chair, I think we already accepted the November 12th. We're on December 3rd now.
Oh, I thought you were, I'm sorry. I was looking at the agenda and all right, then I'll. I did, and I was seconding something else in my head. So I will move to accept the December 3rd, 2024 draft minutes.
I'll second.
Good Lord.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the draft minutes for December 3rd as presented? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. All right,
Thank you for saying that so gently, Jeff, to me. Thank you.
Continuing on, our next item on our agenda is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to come before the board and speak regarding any planning items. If anyone is here from the public, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and present them at the conclusion as necessary. No members of the public being with us this evening, we'll continue along. Again, as always, we have our planning board public hearing guidelines presented in our packet and printed here as well for anyone to review. And then with that, we'll move into our applications for review and public hearings. Our first item on this agenda is item 7A, and this is for 148 Flag Pond Road, and this is a zoning map amendment petition request. Again, this is a request to rezone a portion of 148 Flag Pond Road from industrial to low-density residential zoning district. And this is a continuation of our review. Anything to add, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are just looking for the planning board to finish its report. At the last meeting, I did provide to you as an after-the-fact packet item, Attorney Katsafikis' legal opinion, which was requested by the board at the meeting before. So you have seen that previously. So tonight, I can pull up on the screen. We're just looking to finish that report that we started at a previous meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Any questions from board members on that final piece of information that we received from Attorney Katsiafikis? And Emily, that was shared with the applicant as well, correct?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, since I was the one who was primarily raising that issue, I want to two things. First, I want to commend Austin Gregory, your brother, for doing a fine job, being very patient and presenting your arguments quite well, and dealing with, because I know these sorts of issues get contentious at times and frustrate people, applicants, but I thought he did a fine job, and of course you have too, Mr. Gregory. But second thing was I obviously misread Attorney Katsiafikis' legal opinion, or at least I misunderstood it originally. But now I understand what he's saying is that since that entire frontage was in the I zone, that if a small piece of it is carved out, but the remaining land stays in the industrial zone, that can provide, provided that that new road is adequate at 70 feet wide, that it is not that's not an impediment to breaking this lot out and putting it back into the LDR category. So I thought that might be a roadblock, but it clearly isn't. So it seems to me that if we were to conclude that allowing this LDR on this smaller piece of property is acceptable, I would find it sensible to do, because it's not going to impede the development of the industrial park land in behind it. So my feeling is that the legal opinion has given a green light to us allowing this property to be zoned back into LDR, and at least at this point, to me, it seems to make sense to do so.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think you guys have a sense of where I am, and, you know, I think Mr. Kaskafis, his feedback was, you know, instrumental on kind of both ends. It's, you know, there was a legal opinion on the first revision, and to get it changed. I just have to say that I'm still very concerned, and I agree with you. I think the applicant's done a great job presenting. It can be very emotional. Nothing here is, you know, personal. It's a matter of trying to work through ideas and development of our community. And, you know, everyone has different focus, different interests at stake. I still have a hard time. I mean, just because of the buffering that we're talking about, the different uses, the incompatibility of uses being so close together, and we have the whole area of Flag Pond Road that falls into this category because of easy development. It was easy. I just think in the overall picture for our community, as we try to focus on goals, and I understand that housing is one of our goals. I don't think that the cost value to the overall community to allow this split to get a couple more units of housing is very beneficial. I think at some point in the future, we'll be looking back and saying, we really need to offset our tax base, and we're going to be looking to this industrial land to do that. And having a few more houses that have built up, to me, just does not seem like a wise move. I think we would be thinking very differently if we were talking about a parcel that's been set aside. You know, this industrial park's been there since early 80s, before the 80s. Haven't had the opportunity to develop it yet, but it's there. It's part of our long-range goal. We know we need industrial base. We know our long-term objectives are jobs and employment. And anything that we can do to try to minimize the challenges that an investor would need to overcome would be, I think, very, very wise of us to do now. If we were looking at a parcel where the new school is supposed to go, and we were talking about putting industrial right next to it, that's another incompatible use. I think we would be looking very differently. And so just with that and with the overall benefits, we don't have a whole lot of industrial land set aside. We don't have many tools or options to give our economic development teams for places to come. They've done quite well with the Millbrook Business Park. I mean, sometimes there's a mix of uses. Some of those uses you say, oh, that building should have been in the industrial park, and some of the industrial park should have been in the mill use, but we need to allow them space so when they attract these businesses, we can have more main moleculars come in, right? We want that to offset our tax base. And for me, not only does it make it difficult zoning map-wise to have these little fragmented pieces with this little block cut around it, you know, it's a particular challenge, right? Our industrial park is along, fronts the I-95 for a reason. We see challenges as the I-95 needs to grow. We've seen it with the 112 interchange. Now you've got this big privacy wall for some existing homes. To me, it just makes sense to keep that buffer, keep it industrial, allow easier opportunity for development in the future. I understand that the applicant owns that land now, and it's a non-conforming use. That was a very particularly difficult decision that we made when we were on the ZORS committee. But I think we also, the council in particular, saw the value of that industrial park land. And I respect that currently the 70-foot right-of-way would provide access, but we're creating an island of residential use. And I don't think that that's the best decision, long range, for our community. So I would be in favor of not supporting a positive recommendation to council for some of those reasons I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Carrie Lynn?
I have to pretty much agree with everything that Jeff said. I mean, I'm not as technical as he is, but he made exact points to where we're trying to go, and I just concur with him.
All right, thank you, Carrie Lynn. I guess I myself, I'm not 100% convinced that it's necessary to make the jump as well. I support a lot of the comments that Jeff had. We've worked quite diligently during the zoning update. The lot is a legally non-conforming lot. It's okay as it is. So I tend to agree with Jeff as well. But Emily, do you have that list where we started to finish that report, is what I'm trying to say. And then can you confirm when this goes before council as well? Do we have that date? Did that happen last night?
I do have the report. I also did want to share on the screen, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and we can put this in the after-the-fact electronic packet. I did get info from Code Enforcement Officer Toomey. You had asked me to reach out to him regarding the frontage question you had specifically.
Yep.
So I did basically put into summary our verbal conversation we had after that planning board meeting. And then he said he concurred. It's above this, but I will get this to Lisa and we can get it logged appropriately.
Okay, and then his response was?
So it's a legal lot, but it is considered unbuildable until approved road frontage is constructed. The industrial lot. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this was specific to like access to the industrial lot. So I just want to make sure you had this.
Okay, I think I follow.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Yeah.
So Emily, that interpretation was asked, because I read this question with regards to the 148 Flag Pond Road being presented.
It was to the rear industrial land
But
specifically.
you're asking about that 70-foot right-of-way, that if they were to access off of Flag Pond Road, it allows access, but they would have to create a private roadway because there's not enough frontage on Flag Pond to make it a buildable lot. So there would have to be some sort of a private or public road transferred over to city standards before they could develop anything in the industrial zone, correct?
Yeah, you can create frontage, which we often see people do. But I just know that was a question outstanding from the last meeting. I wanted to make sure that I had this up on the screen for you because I didn't get a chance to get it over to Lisa for the packet. So we'll get this logged, and then if you're ready, I can pull up the report that we were working on.
Jim?
Mr. Chair, if I could just ask Emily, so as the land is currently zoned with the frontage on Flag Pond Road, the mechanism that the code enforcement officer suggests being employed, we wouldn't get into any of that, right? Because there's adequate frontage on Flag Pond Road right now as it's currently zoned?
I'd have to check on that. I think Dave said he looked into this, and they would need to do this either way, I think was the answer that I got, but.
Oh, Okay,
I'd have to check on that for you.
okay.
It's, not to, not the intent of the discussion this evening, because it's the rezoning, but where the rezoning described and the transfer of land, I guess where I was getting with, and not something for me to decide this moment, but the concern was if the zone adjusts like this, then all of the, regardless of if there are shared ownership between adjacent pieces of property, the land, how does the land now meet? Because it's now a new zone. I'm sorry, I'm trying to problem solve and ask the question at the same time. But we now have lots with new zones and frontages that have to apply. So it almost sounds like that we're changing land ownerships, we're kind of horse trading, we're giving from one and adding to another, and we're changing the zone. So when all of the zoning standards apply, and then with that, does it now create, we can't create non-conforming lots, right? And does that apply? That's something not for us to figure out for here, because we're addressing the zoning, but that's sort of a piece to the puzzle, kind of in the back, that just cautious or conscious of. That's all. That's sort of where I'm going with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think either way, there's some nonconformance, because there's a nonconforming use right now, the single family and the industrial.
But if the zone got changed to residential, both lots would be then conforming. But right now, because of it switching to industrial, it's non-conforming.
Right, but it's a non-conforming lot of record, so the lot was already there, then the zoning was changed. So now we're changing zoning and adjusting lots. So the question would be, why can't that adjustment work for both lots? Why can't both lots be conforming? Right, in theory, they need to be, I guess in my eye. Does that
So
make sense, what I'm saying?
maybe it would be helpful if I pull up the map that the applicant or the petitioner submitted.
Sure.
So all I was asking about was just making sure that this lot, because it seemed like that was a question at the last meeting, that this lot could be built on in the future with this as its access way, and the answer is yes, provided that frontage is gained through the development standards to meet private road or public road standards, which people often do, so.
Sure. So, this portion, so the land in the diagonal cross hatch down low, that 3.27 acres, that's one lot, correct? With 70 feet plus or minus of frontage on Flag Pond. Doesn't that, that's one piece of property, right? Wouldn't that not meet the zoning requirements of?
So I don't think that's a property line in the back there. I think it's just area to be transferred over.
Okay.
And maybe the petitioner can give you more details on that.
Sure,
But I
that's-
was reading this as that's the property swap.
Sure. Okay. That's where I'm confused. I digress, but focusing on the zoning piece, we'll let code and legal figure out conforming lots of record and everything. We'll focus on the zoning. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress, but if board members are ready to look at the report document, we can do that. See some nods. Thank you, Emily.
So we looked at the top of this at the last meeting, one of the last meetings, and we got here, and then there was a motion to continue pending an updated opinion from from Attorney Katsafikis. And then you received a legal opinion December 3rd in the meeting packet. After the fact meeting packet.
So, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be important that we put in that December 3rd receipt of attorney's review of our question in the upper bulleted area, right, to document that we also had a legal opinion rendered.
Great, thank you. So with that, the comment there, and not speaking for Jim, but we should probably update that. I think Jim has reviewed the documents and may not agree with that statement anymore, but Jim can, of course, provide his own thoughts on that. But and then the board can discuss. From the discussion so far, it seems that there are a few board members that may agree with that statement. So we could have discussion about keeping that statement, modifying it. Thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, I think we could modify, and my view would be if we were to strike the necessity of maintaining. It's not necessity, but the way I interpret Jim's letter, it's not a legal necessity, but I think it's an important design feature or important characteristic that we maintain the entire lot industrial land to ensure that there is access to the industrial zone property. And then we could delete, or we could leave his February 2021 opinion of concern about having it subdivided, because there's two separate pieces there. You know, the not having access, and then having access that would be non-conforming going through a residential zone.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one question here?
Yes.
So the lot that your properties that consists of your property right now, Mr. Gregory, if it's all right, Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask
Yes,
him a
please,
question.
yes.
So it's not the blue the entire blue section that we see on the plan today?
It is the entire blue section. And that is 2 acres that right now is non-conforming because it's residential use in an industrial zone. But the whole reason the person purchased this lot was the blue before went all the way down through that road. And so they owned behind the blue and on 95, but the hill, they had no access. So the guy bought this, switched the zone, then surveyed this road off and gave us north land and him south land, so they'd have the road, and then sold the house, because he didn't want it as industrial land. 'Cause it's, you know, in order to get industrial use, he'd have to get rid of a cemetery and a house, which would be so much money, it would not make any sense to an industrial use unless you're Amazon or something.
Right, so I guess my question is, the lot that you currently own, you're saying it's the entire blue lot right now?
Yes.
So there are areas that are sort of crosshatched here, area to be transferred from one lot to another, area to be transferred from a different lot to another lot. Have those transfers actually taken place now?
Yes.
Okay. So the access to the industrial, that back industrial park land currently legally exists, that 70-foot strip exists today
Yes.
for access to the industrial park land?
Yes. And the code enforcement officer was just referring to, right now, it's not built up as a road. So right now, you legally couldn't take an 18-wheeler because it's not safe. But anyone to put anything back there, they'd have to build a road anyways.
Sure. No, that's what I didn't understand, whether or not these were still transfers to be made or if they were already done.
Already done.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was a good question, because everything we see says to be transferred, so that's a good question for clarity. Any other thoughts from board members? All right, could we keep going on some of that verbiage, Emily, please? So the statement in our report currently says Jim Molier moves to file a report disapproving the zoning amendment request based on maintaining the entire lot in the industrially zoned land to ensure that there is access to the industrial zoned property. Attorney Cassiafica's opinion from February 2021 regarding lot access in this zone was referenced, and the board received an updated legal opinion from Attorney Cassiaficas, which was included in the December 3rd after the fact meeting. Are there any edits or additional thoughts to that? I know, Jim, earlier you expressed some support in the application, so this statement is from last week, different than your thought now, so I just want to make sure we're...
Well, you know, I really have mixed feelings about it, Mr. Chair. I mean, I agree, Jeff makes a lot of great points. And clearly, there could be more options available to access the industrial park land in the future if this remains zoned industrial. The harm to the applicant is that they can't build a second unit on that property.
It's actually five housing units. If it goes residential, you could get 5 housing units out of the 2 lots, because ADUs.
With the size of the lot.
Yeah, so you could house 5 families on those 2 lots.
I mean, I'm sensitive to that, very sensitive to that concern, but I mean, as I've listened to everyone here, I've been reflecting on trying to, what would be the safest way to preserve access to that industrial land and provide the most options for future industrial uses there. And if we do have this zone back to LDR, it does, or it could limit the city's future opportunities for that industrial parkland. So after everything else I've said tonight, I think I'm leaning towards Jeff's position, and so the report that we have here, moving to disapprove the zoning amendment request, stands.
All right, thank you, Jeb. Any other thoughts? Jeff?
Could we possibly add, we're listing our concerns, to allow multiple options for access to the industrial zoned land. My example would be previously, until the early 2000s, the Industrial Park Road was a dead end. And it did create, some access issues. And you talk about safety. When you said safety, I kind of think about how our communities are changing, and to have that many people that might be employed down there and only one access in, the same thing essentially could happen here. You kind of come off like Wiley Drive. If they were to extend from the existing Millbrook, if the existing section of the industrial park, the second phase of the industrial park, the more options that we have to allow them out onto Flag Pond, even if it's more of a service or an emergency exit, as well as maybe if they can get back to Route 1 would be helpful. I just think it's very important we leave those options for connectivity.
Very disheartening that Jim can make eye contact and look at me, but both Jeff and Matt can look at Kevin and smile at him and stuff, but you can't look at me one time. It's very, very sad, and definitely will be brought up, because it's not how people should run a board. They should be able to look at someone and talk to them like a normal human being. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions from board members? So we have a report here from, we have a report, we have some comments, some thoughts, a few, I guess not really bulleted items here, but any other thoughts on this report? Jeff?
What are the thoughts about, we talked about how much time you and I, Mr. Chair, both sat on that revision committee, that there was a lot of diligent thought put into some sections, or all the sections really, to not get in this pattern of a constant petition to constantly be making changes. Excuse me, I'm just a little taken right now, because I understand that there's vestment, right? And the applicant came before us with an opportunity, and I would have probably done the same thing if there was an opportunity. And when we go through this process, and we went through the process for months of zoning revision, it's to try to get the bigger picture for our community. You sit on long-range planning. It's always, we're trying to look for the long range. Don't necessarily mean to ever offend or feel like I didn't respect somebody, but our position here, and I think why hopefully we're appointed, is to try that we're seen as individuals that have the ability to look towards the future and where we want our community to go and how it can benefit most of us. So I guess I'm just trying to touch on that, is that it takes a lot of energy. I don't know, I mean, that I'm sorry, I don't have any more comment. I just feel like we're trying to have that vision for the long-range betterment of our community. And that's what we reviewed it on those merits. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Jeff. I understand. We have spent much time going through the zoning rewrite process. We've seen recently another project come before the board to rezone after we've made an adjustment. And to your comment, we don't take these lightly. We work through these very diligently, thoughtfully, with long-range term outcome concerns. So, yes, we've talked about this particular application for quite some time. So we are putting in the diligent thought and time and work. So I do understand your thoughts there.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Jeff on so many things, and I was not here for the ordinance change. I do have familiarity with ordinance changes, and I think if we get into too many changing an ordinance, even after 2 years of it being amended, I feel like that's going to set a precedence that everybody thinks that we can just change an ordinance. You know, when the planning board puts in time and then makes the recommendation to council, I feel like, okay, that's a lot of time and energy, but then most times you get the attorney's, you know, opinion or reference into it, and that costs money. It's not just I think a lot of people think it's just, you know, an easy change. It's not. It's months, it's energy, it's time, and sometimes financially. It's not something that should be taken lightly, like you said, and I mean, I feel bad, but we're not here to change everything every time somebody wants to.
Thank you, Carolyn. Another note is we provide recommendations and reports to council quite frequently, and they are just that. They're recommendations and reports, and the council works through it, and they go through a very similar process. And the council is not always in agreement with the planning board, and sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't. So they'll go through a very similar process with this. They'll look at our recommendation, they'll look at the application as well, and ultimately they make the final decision. And we also have our city council liaison, and I know we have city council members that do join us and sit in the audience as well. So I believe city council do understand the conversations we've had and the concerns of the board, and the thoughtful discussions that we feel we have. So with that, the report we have drafted with us this evening, for the sake of continuing on, any additional thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chair, I think if we added a sentence that, and I think this is to Jeff's point and your point, and actually also what Carrie Lynn said, if we added another sentence which indicated that the prior zoning change was made after a great deal of study and thought by both the planning board and the city council, and that notwithstanding this applicant's proposal, it would not be wise to zone this lot back to LDR, as it would negate all of the effort that the planning board and the city council made several years ago.
Thank you, Jim.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll since my motion is still there in the report, I would move that we send this report to the city council.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion? Those in favor? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0 to forward the draft report as outlined and discussed this evening. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda this evening is item 7B, and this is for Elmwood Drive, also known as Peabody Lane. This is for a proposed private road, and this is a continued application and public hearing review. And this is within the low-density residential zone. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The planning board first saw this at their December 3rd meeting. They scheduled your site walk for today. Then we canceled your site walk for today because of snow. So we will have to talk about rescheduling that. And then the public hearing, you confirmed the public hearing date for today. Additionally, our Conservation Commission started their review to give you advisory comments. They had their meeting scheduled right before this one, so it'll be a long night for Steve. And again, just to refresh, this is a private road application for Peabody Lane so that the applicant can build 2 dwellings on the property. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any thoughts from board members or questions for Emily at this time? All right, we have the applicant with us this evening. Anything else to add?
Nope, Steve Blake with BH2M representing the applicant, MSB. We did, I guess, just to maybe elaborate a little bit, we just had a meeting with the Conservation Commission. A couple things came out of that. And I'm not sure if the board has seen this yet, but we did get an updated letter from IF&W about them not having concerns about about this project impacting the Blandings turtle habitat. I know that was a comment that came up last week when we were here, so that letter does exist. That was one thing that we discussed. And then I know there were a couple other questions or comments that came up last time. One being emergency access. And early on in the process, we met with Deputy Chief Pendleton about exactly how to do that, and we do have a turnaround area kind of located between the 2 proposed buildings up on the driveway, and that would be for like an ambulance-sized vehicle. Any other equipment, what we had talked about, he was comfortable backing out. So those were discussions we had very early on in the process. And then I know there was a lot of discussion about the sewer too, and just to elaborate on that a little bit more, there's a sewer manhole that's the end of the public sewer system, right at the intersection of, basically right at the intersection. It's about 150 feet away from the end of Peabody Road. So to extend sewer into the site, what that would mean for this project would be extending about 150 feet of gravity sewer within Peabody Lane, which means cutting through the pavement and cutting through the road, and then also building a force main that would extend up into the site for about 300 feet. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant at this time? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with regards to the sewer, when I was waiting for the site walk to start this morning, I happened to look on one of my apps for the GIS site, not realizing how close this is to some other developments. It looks pretty forested, but it's actually kind of close proximity, whether it be to the nursery. or I believe it's the retirement community. And it almost looks like you're much closer to the retirement community,
Atlantic Heights.
Atlantic Heights. Now, Atlantic Heights is, Emily, is that all held private, or is that a city-accepted streets at this time?
I think those are private streets in there.
So that would then nullify, if they were close within their 200 feet, they wouldn't have right title or interest to tie into that if it's all still privately held.
Yeah, I'll just check the GIS to be sure, but I'm pretty sure they're privately held.
Okay. Because I just didn't know if that option had been looked at for connectivity to the sewer on, the opposite side of the lots. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Jim?
I was reviewing some of the neighbors' concerns. One that we received today seemed to be more concerned with safety and logging trucks and so forth coming in and out Peabody Lane and going to Elmwood, ripping down wires and so forth. Then Mike Bolduc had some concerns, and Mr. Dyer's concerns were also indicated were included in our last packet. I think Mr. Dyer's concerns you resolved by saying that that pond, that gravel pond there.
It's a borrow pit, yeah.
Yeah, Burrow Pit is, that your project isn't going to touch that at all. That will still be left there open.
That's correct, yep, yeah. There were some questions about that. I think there might have been some confusion that we were proposing to fill that, which is not at all in the plan.
Okay. And then the neighbor who was concerned about turning radius and, big trucks and so forth, could you just speak about that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so I think a couple things. So this, it's a real project. It's 2 proposed units, but it's not a huge project. So for construction traffic, I think it's going to be a fairly minor impact. We're not clearing a lot of trees. I don't anticipate there being a large logging truck going in and out of there. And then the corner that the photos that I saw of were, I believe it was right at Elmwood and Peabody. It's a public road right there. So I would assume that it was built to a public standard with appropriate radii. And we can certainly look at bringing construction traffic in through a different way. That was just the guidance that we had received from DPW about coming in from that direction. But it's not something that we're hung up on coming through that way. It could be from another direction as well.
And how about the comments by Mike Bolduc, which I thought were pretty helpful. I mean, he used to be a public works director here in the city.
I did not. I actually met with Mike not that long ago, and I did not see that he made any comments. So I don't know what they are.
Sure. Hold on. Actually, Emily might be able to bring that up on the screen.
Yep, they were in the meeting packet. I'll pull them up.
Apologies if I missed that.
It wasn't that he had very many concerns, but it just looked like a couple of things that would be helpful, at least from his point of view, in terms of trees and buffers and that sort, and drainage. I assume that you wouldn't have any trouble addressing those, but I didn't know if you had any immediate thoughts on it, but you probably can't read it because the print's too small, right?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think
Yes.
most of these have actually already been addressed.
Oh, they have? Okay.
But you can ask the applicant to run you through them.
Well, I don't mean to, I didn't see a date on his notes, so I apologize if you've already addressed those.
Yes. Okay. I know the letter you're talking about now. We did address these comments.
Okay.
And I did, and like I said, I met with Mike. I think it was late last week, and he didn't specifically ask about any of these.
That's great. No, those are the only concerns I had. I just wanted to make sure that you were addressing what seemed to be some of the neighbors' biggest issues, and looks like you have, so thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff?
So, yes, Mr. Chair, I think it's going to be important. We should be debriefing from our site walk, but we probably should reschedule. Having been there today, I didn't realize that there's quite a bit of grade change in this area, more than I kind of had mentally thought of when I think of this area, probably because you guys have done well making all the houses harmonious in the subdivision, but near this pond and where this existing right-of-way, I think you said, around kind of the pond that you're using, be interesting to know what fill or cutbacks are going to take place, and I think that's stuff that we're going to want to see as a board, as well as the buffering that will remain, how far over. I know you had some stakes out there, but there was, we were not going to go wandering around once the site plan was canceled. So I think that's going to be important details that I would like to have information on. How much fill or cutback you're going to do around the pond, and then what we can be looking for buffer from that there's a house that's currently there. I think that'll be important. As well as Jim's prediction about the snow. There was quite a pile of snow at that hammerhead. And what access or provisions might be, what type of either changes could be made, or how are we going to deal with this private road that is going to literally have the city push and stop snow?
Yeah,
So-
and I forgot to weigh in on that. So we do have, the city has an easement on the southern side of where the extension of the private road would be. That's actually a fairly large area to be able to push snow in, whether that's the city that does it or it's done privately. There is area there for snow storage at the end of the hammerhead. And then, I guess just to try to address your first question about the grade, we do have we have a profile that we've designed as part of the plans that you can see. I think it's on that sheet 2, or maybe it's sheet 3, and that's all built to a private road standard per the city's ordinance.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Steve, the revised letter from IF&W, how did that come about?
We requested, we requested more information from IF&W, and that request went to a different person, Derek Yorks, who is I believe he's their biologist, and he reviewed what had been provided by a different department at IF&W and confirmed that he did not have any concerns about this project impacting Blanding's turtle habitat.
So you were looking for more information on it, and they then revised their report.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And we received that guidance on Friday and received an updated letter from IF&W yesterday.
Okay.
And one thing that the Conservation Commission asked us to do was to reach out to IF&W again to get an understanding of why they don't think this project would have an impact on the habitat. That's the one piece of information that I don't know. I tried to find that out as well, but have not heard yet. My assumption is that it's a small project, but we can try to confirm that with IF&W.
Sure. So we have the apron, we have the extension, we have the 12-foot gravel driveway, and are we going to see more grading for that road? I know we see some contours here, we see how that road's graded, and then when it turns gravel, it's not anymore. So is it gonna follow the contours that are there now, or is that, how's that gonna come?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, it'll have to be shaped in a way so that we can drain the road, but the idea would be that it generally follows those contours. And the plan that you're looking at is really intended to be a design of the private road portion and not necessarily the driveway, which is why there's not that same level of detail there.
Understood. All right, thank you. So board members, we need to look at rescheduling our site walk. We have continued application review this evening. It's a scheduled public hearing. Emily, do we need to open the public hearing in order to continue it, or can we continue it without
No, you should
opening?
open the public hearing.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we've had some discussion here. We have a few questions. But that's sort of, perhaps, Emily, could we maybe try to schedule the site walk, reschedule the site walk, perhaps first, and then sort of work that into the minutes? So if early in the morning, 7:30 works for board members, I guess that works for me. I'd like to continue that and perhaps try to get that on the docket, Emily. Does that work for you as well, Steve?
Sure.
As I've mentioned, I cannot do early mornings, but
Yes.
as long as there's a quorum.
So I wouldn't be able to meet you out on the 17th if that's what you wanted, but I can ask Shannon to meet you out there.
The 17th would be a week from today.
Yes, you'd be doing the same thing you were doing today, or we can schedule the 16th. Again, I would ask Shannon to meet you out there.
I think 16th or 17th works for me. Nod from Jim. Any particular?
Just thinking, I mean, we're pretty fortunate tonight. We have a fairly light agenda. If we have a full agenda on the 17th, it might be better if we tried to do the 16th, so we won't have such a long day. Just in all fairness, I mean, I started early today with staff to try to make sure we could be there, and then, so if everyone agreed, I would prefer to try to do the 16th at 7:30, and then that way we can decompress. And is the Conservation Commission going to attend as well, or are they already doing their work?
We are going to invite, Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
we are
please.
going to invite them again, and hopefully they will be able to make it. And then if you can please just make a formal motion, because I think if we were to try to send notices again, they might not get to people. So if you can make a formal motion on the date that you select, that would be great.
Sure. I agree with Jeff. I would support Monday the 16th as well, if that works for Jim as well.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to reschedule our site walk to Monday, December 16th at 7:30 a.m.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to reschedule our site walk for Monday, December 16th at 7:30 a.m.? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. Monday the 16th works for you.
Yes, that's fine. Monday morning, sounds great.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So great. With that, perhaps it's appropriate to open a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to open the public hearing.
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to open the public hearing this evening? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and proceed accordingly.
Mr. Chair, is there utility, there's no one here to speak, either for or against this proposal, but is there utility in keeping, continuing the public hearing to the next meeting and after our site walk? I mean, there's obviously members of the public who would want to attend the site walk, and they may actually want to show up and speak to us here as well. So if that's the case, I'm seeing a lot of nodding. So, Mr. Chair, seeing no one speaking here from the public, I move that we continue the public hearing till December 17th. Is that possible, Emily?
Yes.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion to continue the public hearing to December 17th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. All right, any additional comments or concerns or thoughts, questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question.
Yes.
Would you like staff to provide draft findings of what we have so far and leave the board can ask additional questions like we
Yep.
have in the past? Would you like us to do that for the next meeting packet?
Yes, thank you. That was going to be my next recommendation. That we,
Okay, thank you.
If the board supports that, that we look at draft findings and conditions for that meeting as well. See some nods, yes. All right, so with that, perhaps looking, no additional thoughts or comments from board members, perhaps a motion to continue application review to the 17th is in order.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion to continue application review for Peabody Lane to December 17th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
your time. Thanks.
All right, continuing along this evening, our next item is general correspondences. Do we have any general correspondences this evening, Emily?
No, we just had the planning board after the fact packet.
All right, great, thank you. Our next item, planning department updates and discussion. We have our 2025 meeting schedule. I don't believe I noticed any changes or adjustments to that schedule.
No, we didn't have changes or adjustments.
Would you like a formal motion from the board to accept that schedule, or are we content as discussed?
I would appreciate that. We also, actually, I should say there were adjustments to the notes, just to be clear. So just want to make sure the notes were clear as far as if we needed to adjust the schedule, as far as altering to accommodate revisions, or additional meetings, indicating the start time, And then I put in a definition of like what the primary comment response was based on our discussion at the last meeting. So I should have just called out those notes have been updated.
Thank you. Any thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, I think it's great, and I think it's really nice that we're putting a primary response due date. So hopefully give a little more leverage for the department to tell applicants, hey, this is when it's due by, or you missed your opportunity for the next meeting. So with that, I would move that we accept the draft 2025 Planning Board schedule for the year of 2025.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carolyn. Any additional discussion on the motion to accept the 2025 schedule as presented? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 4-0. Any additional updates?
Not this evening, but in 2025, I want to go back to giving you a little bit more of a report about the planning department. We had kind of started to do that, but because of the late meetings, we just weren't able to keep it up. So
That's good, thank you. We appreciate those extra updates. Item 10 this evening, planning board comments. Any comments from board members? Thoughts? Emily, I did notice in this evening's packet, do we have another city engineer, or do we have a new city engineer? I do read the packets.
I know. So we have a city engineer who's come on board to work with Joe. His name is Adam Bliss. So you'll see some things from Adam and some things from Joe. Adam started in the beginning of November.
Okay, so this is in addition to Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, you may see a few new names on things. Rosalie Turner, you've probably been seeing that name a little bit. So she is the new Water Resource Recovery Department Compliance Manager. I think she's the only other new name in the last few months.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, I probably should have brought this up under the, when we were going over our schedule, but I know we start at 6 p.m. and I'm very happy with that. But I know the board in the past has started earlier, at least for me, from like beginning of January through mid-May. It's would be very difficult to get here on time if we started before 6 o'clock. So for me, I'm very happy that we start at 6, but I recognize that sometimes it's harder on the staff and on applicants. So I'll accommodate my schedule as best I can for the rest of the board, but I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but I'm hopeful everyone kind of likes the 6 p.m. start time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Excuse me, Jim. I was starting to look at Jeff. Yeah, I think we were historically at 5:30, and then I think for the beginning of the year, I think we were at 6:30 for a little bit, and then we sort of split the difference and hit 6 o'clock. And I think 6 o'clock has been working well, also.
Minus that traffic.
I know there's a few of us. I think Carolyn comes from Portland, right? Carolyn's from Portland. It depends on the day. Depends on the day where Jeff is as well, I suspect. But go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, thank you for bringing that up, and I suppose it depends how historically you go. I seem to remember when all city meetings started at 7 p.m., and that was very beneficial. But I understand staffs and applicants, right? We see a lot of applicants now, they're representative, and they're paying professionals to be here. So I want to be respectful of that. For me, though, 6 o'clock is about as early as I can consistently make it. I think it tends to be fair, and I think that we also strive very hard as a board to accommodate all those that are on our agendas by staying late. So I know it's not ideal for staff. There's a little bit of downtime in between, but I think that given that it's a volunteer board, I would prefer to stay with the 6 o'clock, and we are doing our part to try to hear all the applicants on an agenda in a given evening. Thank you.
I concur.
Thank you, yes. All right, any other thoughts? All right, well, with that, it is 7:59 PM and we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.